All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Sridhar Ravilla, who is in lovely Dallas in Texas. How are you doing, Sridhar?
Hey, John, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, and you're a seasoned fractional transformation executive and author of Transformation That Lands. You got more than 25 years, senior leadership positions at AT&T and Tech Mahindra, and you've managed major P&L responsibilities, spearheaded enterprise scale delivery and digital modernization projects and also in cloud computing, artificial intelligence. And that's what we're going to talk about today is we're going to focus on the theme of why smart transformations fail after strategy is improved. So in your experience, Sridhar, what are some of the common signs that a transformation initiative is starting to fail right after the strategy gets approved? Because and the initial plan seems solid. What are the common signs that it's actually in trouble?
Yeah. So John, the first sign, right? Transformation doesn't eliminate risk; it just simply
Hmm.
moves it. And if the conversation of transformation shift into governance, speed, or even AI, ownership cannot be a cultural flow. It has to be
Mm,
structurally explicit.
right.
Okay. If no single executive can answer that clearly, with clarity, the organization is operating on borrowed stability.
Mm.
Okay. That is not about more process, but more of named accountability.
Yeah, yeah. So on that point, I mean, you say that, or you mentioned that leadership often diffuses accountability. What does that mean? Or in practice, how does that manifest?
So let me tell you. So again, most transformation don't fail at strategy, right? They fail
Hmm.
at ownership.
Yeah.
The first crack usually appears right after the approval, when the next uncomfortable decision doesn't have a clearly named owner. That's what I mean. Risk
Mm.
quietly moves into the committees, dashboards, forums, the systems. Everyone looks aligned. Accountability has already diffused. That's the moment transformation becomes a risk reallocation event no one is tracking.
Mm.
You got to have a named ownership, named decision maker for it to sustain and stabilize.
But a lot of companies, though, sometimes they once they move out of the strategy and they move into the implementation, then they tend to just manage everything by KPIs or milestones or dashboards or whatever like that. And so, do you think sometimes leaders maybe are over reliant on data and maybe making the thing maybe more manageable from a company point of view, but without that accountability that you're talking about?
That's a great question, John. So let me take a little bit of a detour. So
Hmm.
let's start on dashboards.
Yeah.
Dashboards show performance metrics.
Hmm.
They don't show ownership gaps. They don't show hesitation. They don't show unresolved trade-offs. We all have seen a lot of green dashboards. In my personal experience, 1 week before a big call with a board member or with the CEO or a CEO of the company, everything is chaos. You see amber, you see red, you see green on the dashboards. But
Hmm.
right on the day of the meeting, everything becomes green. Now, no one cares or take time or has discipline to push on that, asking it why everything is green.
Mm.
What have we done differently to get to this point? Without asking that question, what happens is there are a lot of trade-offs that happen in the background in the last minute. Oh, let's descope it. Let's
Yeah.
change the timeline. Let's do a band-aid solution. Automatically everything in amber and red becomes green. So that accountability of you double clicking on why, even if it's a green dashboard,
Mhm.
why is important question. And the other important question is, if you can't answer a question, it's called resignation test. If you can't tell who resigns if the transformation at scale fails, that's a real signal that there is no accountability.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting point too. Yeah, because well, what they always say anyway, like success has many fathers and failure's an orphan. So yeah, if things
You're
are
absolutely
turning
right.
red, I mean, people are running away from taking responsibility for. I think that's where also where committees come in too, isn't it? Like if there's a group or a department or a committee looking after a certain part, it also allows them to kind of dilute accountability a little bit.
Yeah. When the committees are involved, John, I call it the the deferral committees. That's what I call
Mm.
it. So what happens is when the committees are formed and there is no named owner for a particular task or an activity. When I say task and activity in the bigger sense, not like day to
Mhm.
day mundane activities, right? The committees will say, "Oh, okay, let's revisit this later. Let's get more data." We all
Mm.
grew up in 2000s. Data driven decisions was a mantra, right? Everybody's like, "Oh, we got to make decisions based on the data."
Yeah.
But it has gone to a point where the leaders cannot make any decision with petabytes of data. They want more data, right? I mean, once
Yeah.
my colleague was stressing out and asking, "Hey, what's happening?" He said, "Hey, my boss wants more data." I'm like, we just sat over a cup of coffee. We looked at the data he has, and in my judgment at that point, I said, "You know what? You have enough data to make a decision. Obviously, it's not a Google map to get to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
destination, but
Sure.
you got to take some risks. You got to have some judgment in this." And I told him in a funny way, if you have any more data than this, a monkey can make a decision.
Mhm.
We don't need humans. We don't need
Yeah.
leaders, right? So that's a common thing is, oh, let's get more data. Or let's get this data point. Let's align one more time, right? These are the small deferrals that the committees and the forums make. Everyone, each one feels harmless, John, but every delay reallocates risk, right? Over
Yeah.
months, these micro deferrals stack into systemic fragility,
Mm.
and as you know, failure rarely arrives suddenly. It accumulates
Yeah.
quickly,
No.
quite
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the things that Teresa would say is the number one destroyer of homes in the US. When you ask people that question, they'll say, "Oh, is it fire or flooding or hurricanes?" And you say, "No, it's termites." And
Yeah,
it's
there you go. It
termites.
takes time, and they steadily go against at it, right?
Yeah.
So that
And the
was
trouble
causes
is
the
with termites, they're busily working away, eating your house, and then one day it just falls down. But it doesn't happen overnight, like you said. And as you said, in strategic projects and stuff like that, is if you don't have that level of accountability, you may have the equivalent of termites in your plan. But you also mentioned one interesting thing as well is, as you said, data. Because yeah, I think that's been the problem over many years now. It's like we can get data on almost anything, but
Mhm.
does it mean anything? Does it really tell you anything? Does it add to it, or does it actually sometimes the more data you add, the less clear things become?
Absolutely. And there's another term to that too, right? GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
It depends. Some leaders have an issue of transparency and trust, and they ask a question, but the question is very with limited focus, meaning they don't give you the full problem. They don't want
Mm.
you to know everything. They just want you to
Yeah.
solve a small piece of the pie, and
Right.
and
Yeah.
their job they think is to put things together. But if you do not explain the whole problem, the data collectors, I call them the minions,
Yeah.
right? The downstream people, they
Hmm.
don't know what they're collecting. They don't know which data is important. It's a puzzle, right? Pieces of the puzzle. If you're asking to go find a cheetah in the puzzle, in 100-piece puzzle, they may be looking for those, but they may find an elephant one. But if you don't understand the book full picture, saying, hey, you need to fix a jungle puzzle. So jungle has elephants, cheetahs,
Hmm.
lions, and so on and so forth. They will miss the data point, right? So it's a
Mm.
relevant data is important, not just any data. And to get to that relevant data, it takes a lot of leadership vision and asking the right questions at the right time and having the full transparency. You just empower your team, let them know what you want. Yes, you can say, what, hey, this is what I want, but I want you to focus on this. That way
Yep.
they do understand the broader cause. They can still focus on their piece. If they find something that fits the broader cause, they can still bring that to the appropriate team member. Could be another person is working it, or the leader themselves is working it, right? So that combo is very important. So data, that's why the data driven decision is very important. But if you don't have the right data, you can have all the data in the world, it's not going to lead to anything.
Yeah, and I like what you said about the transparency, because you're right. Because if And this is a huge problem often in organizations, is that somebody, they're given the direction, here's what we need to do, and off they go and do it, and then they come back and the executive says, man, it's not quite what I wanted, and
Yep,
they go back again. And the problem is that they've never, as you said, they've never been clear, and they've never explained exactly what they want, or as you said, the overarching strategy or other
picture.
parts of it. And so there's so much time wasted in going back and forth.
Yeah, and this nervousness, right? I mean, I've been in that
Mhm.
position before
Yeah.
that, hey, I got to add value. If I tell
Mhm.
everything to my subordinate who is equally smart and they didn't
Yeah.
get promoted and I got promoted for obvious reasons, I don't want him to get the credit or bypass me. That fear exists in the corporate world, John. You know that very well. You being a
Yeah.
senior
Yeah.
leader in the system, you've been the founder and CEO for many companies. That is real. That
Mhm.
problem, that nervousness and tension exists, right? And that's where things fall apart,
Mm.
right? You giving limited information, almost certain that you're setting your team to failure.
Yeah, and some people may do that actually subconsciously, and actually also, acting out on fear subconsciously, or that they've never been shown how to. Because there's a lot of things. I mean, how did you agree, Sridhar? But there's a lot of leaders who don't really understand how strategy translates into execution, right? They don't understand. They think that maybe painting a pretty picture for everybody is not is enough, but it's not. I mean, you have to get more down in the weeds before you hand it off.
Absolutely right. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, Transformation That
Mhm.
Lands. I have seen you, John, probably have seen more than I did. I kept asking the simple question, right? Why do so many well-funded, well-led transformations still fail? I've
Mhm.
seen it across different companies, smart people, big budgets, great technology. On paper, everything looks solid, but somewhere along the way, ownership would thin out.
Mhm.
Judgment will move into systems, and leaders didn't even realize they have stepped back because the dashboards were green. That
Mm.
tension, that pattern stayed with me. So the book is really my attempt to make sense of that pattern. Intelligence
Yeah.
is scaling fast, leadership capacity isn't.
Mm.
That's
And
the gap, and that gap is where transformations quietly break.
yeah, yeah. And I think part of it too is that people struggle with simplicity. I've found that throughout my career. Is like, you can go do strategy, you be doing strategy with people, and then they start to get into, oh yeah, okay, yeah, we can do this, but what about this, and then what about that, and what about the other? And I was going, forget about all that. Like, just map the simplest path, and then we'll deal with the exceptions later. But people want to complicate things from the get go, and then once they've complicated things, as you said, nobody wants to take responsibility for taking anybody off track.
Yep. And you're right. You're right in saying that, forget about it. You are the owner, right? So you can
Mhm.
take that risk. You can tell the team, I acknowledge that. Let's park it. But you focus
Yeah.
on this, because if you try to build everything, you can never have a super fast car, right? If you
Yep.
visualize a Dallas street roads or New York street roads, with the lights and with the traffic signals all over the place, with people crossing, you can never imagine building a speed cars,
Yeah.
right? F1 will never exist. So you have to sometimes sit back, relax, and envision a clean slate to start off with.
Mhm.
That's when the ideas will come in. Then you start adding, the blockers as needed for the project. Then you are going somewhere now. If you bring
Mhm.
everything to the table at the very beginning, you'll not even take off.
Yeah. And tell me, because obviously you've been involved in AI and automation and all of that. Tell me, I mean, automation is fantastic, and it's great for efficiency and all of that. But how do you balance, like, when to especially when you've got a strategic project, or and you're trying to execute on it. At what point balancing when you should automate things, or when it should be semi-automated, but where there's still the accountability, so it's not just automate and forget.
No, no, it's not. Obviously, we have to ask few questions, right, before automating.
Hmm.
Before I get to that answer, I wrote my second book. which is called Humans at Scale.
Yeah.
The reason I wrote that book, it's published already, John, is because I have seen one too many headliners in the last 6 months, 6 to 12 months, with two common phrases in every sentence that the corporations release. One is something to do with layoffs, and in the
Yep.
same sentence, somewhere along the line, there is AI, right?
Yep.
Layoffs, AI. It could be
Hmm.
AI enabled, it could be AI driven, it could be AI investment for the reason for the layoffs. But in normal people think that, oh, we are getting laid off because of AI.
Hmm.
And the same feeling the leaders are also falling trap into. They're falling into a trap.
Hmm.
So they don't have a 360 view. I call them 270-degree leader. So they're missing that 90 degrees of AI, right? It's not
Yes.
always about, AI will automatically give you what you want, the ROI, the speed you
Hmm.
need. That's not the case. There's a 90-degree missing, the missing quadrant, right? It
Yeah.
shows up, subtly in critical ways: emotions, informal networks, and hidden labor. AI can
Yeah.
only see output. Humans absorb the friction. AI cannot. AI
Hmm.
doesn't have any emotions. It can tell you,
Right.
okay,
Right.
it's red, it's green, it's blue, but because it's red, what is going to happen? What kind of friction it's going to develop within the organization? What kind of the bad customer experience we are delivering? AI cannot do that. So
Hmm.
that's very important, right? The missing 90 degrees is very important for leaders to have. I call
Yeah.
it as efficiency initiative. That's what leaders need to start thinking with AI. You cannot automatically sit in a room and say, you know what, uh, we can replace people with AI, the workforce with AI. That's a pretty inaccurate statement. I would not say wrong. Yes, there's 80-20 rule. There's
Sure.
definitely 20% of the work we can easily replace with AI. There is some efficiency gaining. Every project, every transformation you want to have seen, you can automatically have a lift off of 20% with just doing some automation, with just moving to AI, with just doing some kind of a transformation. But the crux of it is, for it to sustain and to continue beyond 20%, you got to ask some serious questions. The accountability comes into play. Real AI efficiencies need to be evaluated. ROI needs to be measured. Some of those
No.
things are missing with when people decide doing AI.
Yeah. No. I absolutely agree. And I think the way I look at it today, Sridhar, actually is I think when you look at your job, right, if your job is very task driven, right, there's probably a lot of it that AI can do and probably do better. Uh,
Yeah,
so I think where we humans, and it ties in with what you're saying earlier, is that we need to raise ourselves up and not be and be the orchestrator of the AI that we use and use it. And that way we use it in an accountable way because we're directing it. We may not be doing everything, but we're directing it. We're using our intelligence, our empathy, our emotional intelligence, etc., to add to, and the creativity and all of that to add to all of it. And I think that's what's missing in that when people say layoffs equals AI. No, not really. It means that if you have good smart people and they learn how to leverage AI to do the things that AI is good with and stay and then elevate themselves so that they actually become more valuable because the way they can operate and the space it creates, that's the other thing too, it's space it creates to operate. I've been putting off, I'm used Claude Cowork and I've been putting off a lot of kind of tidying up work and organizing work and stuff. And I've now outsourced all that to Claude Cowork. So now I'm not wasting my time spending an afternoon arranging folders and stuff. I'm having Claude Cowork do that kind of, which isn't high value. It's valuable work, but it's not high value work, right?
yeah. And John, you just said it, narrated very well. Just to put a
Yeah,
slightly different spin, or just to complement what you
sure,
said,
sure.
there is never a 360-degree visibility for any leader, right?
Hmm.
270 degrees is what AI can give you, right? The systems can surface the behavior, volume, time, output, speed, everything. That's the 270 degrees of an AI. But the remaining 90%, the mood,
Yeah.
motivation, informal influence, quiet fatigue was inferred, not measured. Good leaders learn to sense it.
Hmm.
Bad leaders ignore it.
Yeah.
Not because they're intentionally doing it, they don't know,
Hmm.
right? So they're ignoring it. and they sometimes pretend that it didn't exist. So
Yeah.
so there is that value of 90 degrees. I'm going back to my book thesis, but
No, no,
that's what I call it, 360, and the missing 90 degrees, which is exactly what you said, that you are still there.
yeah.
You got to be there.
I mean, to tell you, Sridhar, how often one of the things that, yes, you don't want to go on your gut all the time, but gut instincts and all those kind of things, I mean, those are real, and they're built on like experience and stuff. And sometimes when we go against our gut instinct, and even we go on the data, turns out that our gut was right. And I think that's the danger, as you said, that actually the 90%. It's a danger that people start to diminish things like instincts and gut instincts and your own your own thoughts and creative thoughts and all of that. And I think that is the danger, because it's not one replacing the other, it's the two working in tandem.
Yep, you're absolutely right. AI should amplify our judgment, the leader's judgment, not replace it.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
That's what the gut instinct. AI cannot replace that. There's
Mhm.
not enough data that we can feed or a model that can tell AI to replace, to come up with its own judgment. It will not. It cannot. Not at this stage. Maybe someday,
Yeah.
sometime in future.
And that gets back to finish up, that gets back to your accountability piece, because uh, I can already hear this happening in organizations where people go, "Oh, it's not my fault. It's the AI. The AI said we should do that. It was the AI that did."
Absolutely.
I can see AI becoming a scapegoat for some people.
It is, and
Mhm.
it absolutely is. They just stand behind. They have, that's what I call reallocation of risks. Right
Right.
now, you're just moving. It's a risk reallocation. Even every transformation project, trust me, AI automation, anything to do with AI, anything to do with cloud transformation, anything to
Mhm.
move from legacy, build versus buy, doesn't matter what it is. Moving from legacy to the latest thing, the risk is quietly moving onto AI.
Mm.
And you cannot
Yeah.
blame AI. It's not a person. It doesn't take ownership or accountability,
Yeah.
right? It's there just to help you. And I'm not saying don't use AI, because slowing down or replacing speed is not the answer. It's just that you developing that ambiguity and judgment and accountability and influencing AI is the key.
Yeah.
And it should not be a risk reallocation event. I have seen that time and again, John, in many projects that happens.
Yeah, no, I could see that, and I think, yeah, it's extremely important that you stay with that you hold the accountability. So if you're leveraging AI,
You have
whatever,
to.
but you're still the person responsible, because you're the one who should be reviewing the output or the processes that it's running or whatever, and you should be the one who's able to prove that it's doing something better than than whoever was doing it before.
I call it the resignation test. It's probably extreme. I haven't tried
Hmm.
it in real life because people will not be happy. They'll be mad at me. I
Hmm.
say, I ask this, I want to ask this question. If it's a large transformation beyond $200 million, you should ask this question. If the system fails at scale, who resigns? Yes,
Yeah.
you have a great solid, KPMG comes, Deloitte comes, the big four, they come and give a big show, right? They have
Yeah.
great stories on how to solve the problems. They have models, AI models, cloud models, whatever it might
Mhm.
be. But somebody should ask this question: if this fails at scale, who resigns?
Yeah. It's a,
That is,
yeah, that's an excellent question, and that's one. Yeah, I think it has to be answered, because then there's the who is ultimately responsible.
yeah. That then the ownership is real or not. If the
Hmm.
answer is vague, the governance model is vague. If it's clear, the system is probably healthier than it looks.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
everything stops at a CEO, you can say that, but you cannot always, all problems do not stop at CEO. Then we don't need anybody else in the company making decisions.
and that's why nothing ever, and that's why politics and government, nothing ever works, because nobody ever takes responsibility. Nobody ever
Correct.
resigns.
Yeah. I am big on A and O, accountability and ownership.
Yeah, yeah.
Since I've been practicing that for the last 20 years, John. I even did my MBA 5 6 years ago, only to figure out I have learned my own leadership traits, style of doing things. I want to evaluate in the modern COVID if those leadership skills are still intact, or should I
Mhm.
reconfigure myself, rechange myself, right?
Yeah.
And that's when I did MBA with Jack Welch. And
Mhm.
surprisingly, I'm pleasantly surprised that most of the techniques I've been using and most of my colleagues and friends have been using are still true to the
Yeah.
date.
Yeah.
That's why
Absolutely.
some people needs to continuously do their education and look at the newer models of doing business. There are some unconventional leadership strategies people need to follow, which I have done few
Mm-hmm.
times in my career, like a nap time principle. Everybody wants to make a decision now. You got to make decisions quickly. It doesn't mean that you got to make it in an instant,
Yeah.
right? You just take some rest, weigh in all the decision, step back in a meeting, and then you come up with your decision. That's called the nap time principle. A strategic
Mm-hmm.
rest to your process of thinking. Walk away from it.
Yeah.
Then you come back. Then you will find the right solution for it, right?
Absolutely.
Or give menu of options. It's called influence without mandate. If you
Mm-hmm.
have 4 or 5 intelligent, smart people on your team, and you're working on a big transformation projects, everyone has a say in it. But instead of you mandating them what to do, you simply ask them to choose their responsibility.
Yeah.
Right? If they
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
choose,
Yeah.
obviously you're going to help them, but let them choose the responsibility. Right? That the command always creates complaints, but choosing creates commitment.
Mm. Yeah. And I think the other part too, Sridhar, is avoiding that one where it's well, it's kind of me and it's kind of Sridhar as well. So
Yeah.
we'll put both people on it
Never
as
works.
the owner.
Never works.
Never
I
works.
developed the framework. If there is not a clear single owner, forget about it.
Yeah.
Then the the blame game starts. Might as well include AI in it.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. Well, listen, thanks you so much, Sridhar. This has been very interesting. All of Sridhar's information will be below this video. But before we go, just remind people about what you do.
Yes, I am. I have 25 years of experience in both tech and telecom industry, John. I have run a large-scale transformations across IT platforms and global delivery models. As you know, at that scale, decisions affect millions of customers and billions in capital.
Mhm.
When I began to notice as as systems got smarter and faster, ownership became quieter. I go
Yeah.
back to the dashboards were green, AI models were improving. But if you
Mhm.
asked who owned the consequences when something went wrong, the room would hesitate.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's why I started writing books. I book right now. They're all on Amazon. You can search on my name. You will find books. Um, right now, I'm almost a full time author, but I'm jumping onto my next gig pretty soon here. Either continue as a fractional leader or a full time corporate executive, John.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on the books and on your work. And thank you very much for sharing the insights with our audience. Thank you for watching and listening. And I'll see you all again soon.